Hi, thank you for joining us today for another. All right, let's start it over again.
It doesn't matter. We're going to keep it rolling, girl.
I know. Hi, and thank you for joining us today for another episode of Girls Talk, Candid Conversations. I am here with the girls, and today we are going to talk about people-pleasing behavior. This is something that I know I personally am very in tune with. I know a lot of other people who are as well, but I want to get y'all's take on it. So, people-pleasing is the behavior of being willing to do anything to make others happy, constantly being available for others with few or no boundaries, and putting others people's feelings in front of your own. And this can oftentimes make a person seem more agreeable, nicer, friendly, helpful. There's all kinds of reasons why people are people pleasers. But I want to get y'all's take first. Kari, do you feel like, would you classify yourself as a people pleaser based on this definition?
Okay. Wait. So, prior to this year, I would have said no. And that's because I always saw myself as, I have my focus and that's where I'm going. Like, that's my direction. And the idea of people pleasing is that you ebb and flow a lot based on people around you, right? Mm-hmm. So when you have your own self-direction, you're like, okay, thank you. I appreciate it, but I'm still going, right? And then, of course, a lot happened at the beginning of this year, and I had to start reassessing me, right? Because the thing about, I think, extremes are always, for me, I've learned extremes are where you don't want to be, okay? And I had to look at myself and figure out where the extremes were, right? And for me, I was very self-directional. Like, I've got a plan and I'm going, right? So the extreme is almost like extreme selfishness, right? Mm-hmm. And so in looking at it this year, I had to go, okay, well, if you want to maintain certain relationships, if you want to be a little bit more in tune with yourself and how you flex and ebb and flow, you really have to figure out where the balance is, right? So I'm self-directional still, but how does my boundaries or my lines shift to allow other people in without them dominating, going to the other extreme, which is the whole people pleasing. So this year, I think I've had to be a lot more cognizant of what I say, how I say it, which really goes against every grain in my body. And but it is what it's that whole point of you get to a certain point and you have to start figuring out how you become a better human. And I don't think I'm a people pleaser, but I do think I've had to incorporate tools and skills to be better at actually listening to others and engaging them in my life, or making them feel as though their input is heard, valued, right? But not like overwhelming me.
Okay.
So.
All right. Now I would say, I wouldn't call that people pleasing.
No.
I would just say that to me that sounds like you are purposefully and intentionally trying to make people feel as if their feelings and their thoughts are more valid. And that's wonderful.
And they're a part of your life.
Yes, and that's healthy.
Yes. Well, hopefully we're keeping that right.
Yes. Monique, would you call yourself a people pleaser?
I used to be a big people pleaser. But the older I got, and it was because of a lot of trauma that I had growing up, where I needed to feel like I kept people close to me. So in order for me to keep people close to me, then what do? You just acquiesce to whatever it is that they want you to in order not to lose people. So the older I got, the more I realized that was very toxic behavior on my part. And that, people are going to leave whether you acquiesce to their every need or whether you put boundaries in place to say, okay, I'm going to prioritize myself. Not that you don't matter, but I also matter in the situation. So yes, I used to be a huge people pleaser to the point where, just like Carrie said, no, you move and you change with whomever you are around at that time because your primary goal is to please this person, make this person happy. So you kind of, like you said, like switch into or morph into whatever that person needs you to be at that time. So I have gotten so much better. The older I got now, I'm like, you know what? I even just had to make a really hard decision based on prioritizing my needs over someone else's.
Yeah.
So I have gotten a lot better. Do I need to improve a little bit more? Absolutely. Because sometimes I still find myself switching over to that too, because you don't want to disappoint people. You don't want them to, feel a certain type of way. So if you're naturally prone to that behavior, then you're always having to check it.
Yeah.
So I'm getting better. Like Carrie said, I was way over here. I'm kind of maybe over here a little bit, but I like to be in the middle without going over here to saying like F everybody. I'm gonna do what I want to do. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, there we go.
That's right. So Lana, would you classify yourself as a people pleaser?
Well, actually, a lot of what Monique just said resonates a lot with me. That I used to be one. And that was based on fear of losing people out of my life. So as I was getting older, and I think it's actually I think it comes to you in your early like right around 40. Where I don't know why, but you start to see the retrospect of your life and also where you're going from now on, and you're starting to think that maybe it's just pretty unhealthy to constantly be the Johnny on the spot and constantly be available for everybody, because the only person that is hurt in all of this is yourself. For me, this has been really huge struggle on learning how to say no, and basically reverting to a toddler behavior, because that's what toddlers are really good about. They tell you no and everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, they do.
So, but once you kind of start putting your needs in first, and I don't think it's a selfish behavior, because if you're okay and if your needs are met, people around you are happier, and the ones who are not supposed to be in your life, they're going to walk out regardless.
Absolutely.
So for me it's been really important to allow myself to get my needs out up front, and then triage needs of others
I like that.
who may or may not need that. That's
I like that triage need. It's like
You just like
prioritize. Well, it's prioritizing who needs you the most at that time. Because in triage, that's what they do. Who's the person who's the sickest that needs the most attention first? So
yes, because I also believe that because you are always available, and it's kind of rewarding, because people come to you first, but they don't necessarily actually need you. They just know that they will get for you immediately what they need, instead of either tending to their needs themselves or actually trying to find a solution. So that's
self-soothing.
yeah, exactly. So but then at the end, everybody, you're miserable, you're exhausted, you're emotionally drained, and you secretly hate everybody, which is that's the truth. And I'm not there, no, but there have been points in my life where I just had to basically say, I just can't anymore.
Radhika, what about you?
So that's a good one. And, before reading our lovely prompts for these talks, I would say, I'm not a people pleaser, but let's be real, y'all. I am a people pleaser. But here's the thing. In the talk, it talks about the different types of people pleasers. And then I was like, all right, there's the classic, because everyone knows about the classic one. You know, you just keep giving, you're okay, happy, la-di-da. But as I got to it, and let's be real, there are 4 type of people pleasers. And I kept reading, I'm like, okay, no, that's not me. Hard no. So you have classic, shadow, and then you have the pacifier, and then there's the resistor. And when I got to the resistor, I was like, I think this is me.
Can you let us know like what the resistor
Yes.
is?
Oh yes, I'll dig a little deeper for y'all. So this resistor people pleaser is an individual that understands people pleasing is one of those things that is really unattainable. It makes no sense because you cannot make everyone happy, but they are still inclined to try to do it because whether maybe it's some life trauma that may have occurred or you're in need of certain validations. So it's like you're stuck. And so with that knowledge, it makes you resistant to the fact and a little bit like either you emotionally close off a bit just because it causes you to kind of have that feeling or that stir of emotion knowing that it is something that is not what you should do, but yet you do it because it's that you're seeking some sort of acceptance, right? And so, and then I kept going, and then it says these type of individual tends to have roles and positions in leadership because it allows them to kind of lean into this a little bit more. And I'm like, mother flipper. This seems like my whole life story right here in this little blurb. And I'm like, okay. And it does make sense. Like when I'm thinking back on it and thinking back on like just me moving through life and just wanting to kind of, there is that acceptance and wanting the validation. But I know like wholeheartedly I can tell you it makes no sense. You're not going to make everybody happy. But you still have that urge or want to kind of be validated or accepted. Because one of the things is that's part of human nature. We are one of the species that are built to want to be together and connected. And so based on different things as we grow up and things we learn, there are different tactics we use to connect with others or things we see that people use to connect with others. So we start to either apply to our own lives or start doing those things. And so people pleasing is one of those things that is common wherever you look, right? So it's bound for you to learn these things. And so, unfortunately, yeah, I'm a people pleaser. We're going to try and course correct it, but it's going to be a struggle. But at least, you know, I can acknowledge I am and kind of now figure out how it is that I kind of course correct and see when those things are kind of going sideways.
What about you, Kim?
Yes and no. So I feel like everybody has a little bit of a people pleaser in them. I feel like it's ingrained in us since we're kids, honestly. Like I do it to my own children. It's part of socializing. It's part of creating relationships. It's so important. We always say, oh, you must share. Oh, you have to use kind words. Oh, you know, you have to do this. You want to have friends when you grow up. We use this and we ingrain it in our kids at such a young age that it's so important to please people and to create friends and create bonds and have these relationships. And I feel like it just takes a new role from there. I mean, like when my mom was growing up, it was, you know, you must listen to your husband and you do these things, you honor, obey, and you're people pleasing. You must be the pleaser in your house. You're the one who's supposed to be the great hostess and please all the people. You're the one who's supposed to, you know, squash the wars between the kids. Your mom, you come in and you create the calm. And I feel like that's ingrained in us to be those women. So in one hand, yes, I'm a people pleaser because I'm the one who comes in and I have to create the calm. In a world of chaos, I have to be the one that comes in and smooths everything over and is the good hostess and presents a presentation. It's a presentation that we all perform and, you know, it's just part of it. But in that same hand, I'm also very much so, it can be toxic, like Lana said, and you can get resentful of people when you do so much pleasing for everybody else. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Absolutely.
And you keep pleasing and pleasing to the point of you're pouring from an empty cup. So you have to eventually get to a point where you say, I've got to start pleasing myself. And like you said, prioritize. Who needs this the most from me right now? Who can problem solve and create their own solution to the problem in the controversy at this moment. So, I mean, that's my take on it. That's where I feel like I'm at in life.
I have a question for you though. So as I was listening to you, do you think that the idea of people pleasing, the idea of, well, if you take people pleasing, the actual title of it, right? But what it means is giving of yourself, right? Be nurturing, doing things to be liked or doing things to be accepted. Do you think it's more driven or ingrained on girls, women than it is men?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and I think that women are naturally more agreeable than men.
Is it naturally or we're reared to be?
That I don't know.
Okay.
Like this kind of like a chicken or the egg.
Okay.
But I mean, you can look at men and women, and there are obviously major differences between the two, physically and mentally,
Emotionally too.
and emotionally. And I think that that's maybe just one of the factors that differentiates men between women, whether it is taught to us or it's just naturally there. That I don't know. I know. I feel for me, it's just naturally there. I look at my youngest daughter, and she is the most nurturing child, the sweetest, kindest little girl you will ever meet.
Yes.
And that's just how she is.
So here's another question. When she does these nurturing things, because she is, do you give her accolades? Like, that is so nice of you, that is so thoughtful of you.
Yes. And I tell her thank you. I mean,
Okay.
because these are things that she does, not because I ask her to, but for instance, that's
who
what
she is.
and that's what she wants to do. For instance, when I was pregnant with my youngest, it was a horrible pregnancy. And there were days that she would come in and I would be napping and she would, take her little fingers and rub my forehead and give me a kiss and tell me she loved me and ask me how are you doing? And that's just, that's just who she is. So I think for some people that nurturing component is just there.
Yeah.
And she loves everybody. She wants to talk to everybody and be friends with everybody. But she also knows that you're not everybody's cup of tea. But while I am I'm nurturing, for me, the people pleasing is, I realized a few years ago that I'm a people pleaser to a fault. To the point that I will say yes to something when I don't have the time for it. I don't have the emotional or the mental or the physical capacity for it because I don't want to disappoint someone. And then not only am I taking away from the other people and things that I need to be focusing on the most, I'm stressing myself out and then not giving my best to this thing that I agreed to do because I should have said no from the jump, but I didn't. And when that hit me in the face, it's like, oh my God, what is wrong with me?
But I think men get a bad rap though when they're people pleasers. I feel like they get a very bad rap. I feel like other men are very condescending and belittling to them, like, oh, you're weak because you're being a people pleaser.
Even women too, like,
Yeah.
like if you come across a man that may be a little,
Accommodating,
accommodating, you're like, what is wrong with you? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, no, but then you're gonna kind of run over him a little bit. Not me. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But then, like you look at them, and I think you and I had a conversation about, women, and this is, kind of a little off topic, but it's really not, because we're talking about people pleasing. Like, we want the man to be the man in the relationship,
Strong.
right?
To take charge.
Yes.
So if you're, like you said, like from one extreme to the next, so if you're too much over here, then it's kind of like almost the roles are kind of reversed a little bit. So I need, and for every woman is different, so I'm just speaking for myself, because you said about the taking it, so I would prefer for a man to be a man and be like, yes, this is what we're going to do, and not be like, I don't know, what is it that you want to do all the time?
I feel like it's a give and take. I think there has to be balance in it because I think
well, that's what
depending
comes
on
with the extreme.
Depending on your emotional state, sometimes we need the man to be the people pleaser and the soother. Sometimes we need that person to come in and be our solid foundation and give us that peace when we're on an emotional roller coaster, and we need the people pleasing at that point.
Absolutely, but not all the time.
But not all the time. I think it's a balance.
But is it people pleasing or is it nurturing? So there's a difference between the two.
Or emotional availability.
But before we change
Yes.
that, because those are all great ones, we do need to put a note, I think, is sometimes we have this connotation about I want the man to be the man. We need to be careful of when we say that. What does it mean to be the man? Because it can go so many ways, and yet then we come around and complain because, hey, he's being a manly man. You wanted him to be a man, right? So
I want him to be a man.
Exactly. So what does it mean to be a man? I think that's something that needs to be clarified, period, when we make those statements.
Yeah.
Because it can go either way.
Well, and there's
Okay.
just the same way there's so many different types of women, there's a lot of different types of men.
Exactly.
And I would not put any one of us in the exact same box.
That's right.
No, we are all totally different. And it's the same with men. I would not put your husband in the same box as my husband. And
Well, I actually want to come in
like, y'all don't
because, I
got
kind of sat there on the sidelines listening to you guys and trying to figure out where this conversation will, lead us. So, yes, all of you are right. But, so when we're talking about people pleasing, it means different to a man than it means to a woman. Also, almost every single guy knows that women are more attracted to the stronger, the bad guy, and the good guys finish last. I mean, let's go into cliches.
Exactly.
Now,
Yes, it is.
in reality, and then women want that sensitive, compassionate man that is also
Manly.
but he feels the feels, and he can sit there and talk you down when you're you're raging and you're just angry. You want that, but then you want him to come in and say, okay, we're doing this or we're doing this, because you're sick of asking, so what do you want for dinner?
I don't know.
I don't know. How many? That's basically what
you wanna go?
You want him to make the decisions, but then at the same time you're like, he's so controlling. So I think we going into this deep dives and topics, but different people imply different things to the same subject.
It's not cookie cutter.
There is no cookie cutter, there is no mold, there is no frame, and just like what Lee said, there are 6 of us here. We are all different. You cannot take one mold and cookie cut us. I mean, none of us will fit that. So you just have to basically decide what's right for you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
society kind of gives you, the guidelines, but you gotta pick and choose what works for you, because otherwise you're still going to be miserable.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to what you asked earlier and what you brought up. Why, as women, do we care so much about people pleasing or being liked by everybody? Why is it so ingrained in our being? Why do you think that is?
That's a great, it's, okay, so you made a comment in terms of the type of people pleasing. So one of the things that we haven't even clarified is, there is the idea, the top level notion of what people pleasing is, which is really the classic people pleasing, right? Which is what you described to a fault. But there are really multiple types of people pleasing.
Yes.
So it's almost like there's the reverse people pleasing, the one where you're so completely on the reverse, like me, like you're not, no, I'm not doing this, no. But then the guilt strikes in from all the no's you go, and then you go extreme, which I've experienced, right? So I think that we first have to also look at, there are multiple types of people pleasing. So when you look at women, there's some women that don't fall into the classic, right? There's some women like me, for example, or probably Radhika, and we fall into the very last one, which is what we talked about.
Opposite,
the resistance.
resistance.
Yes. So what we do is we function on the extreme of no, I'm I'm doing this. Nope, no. And then you go, oh gosh, I hurt this person's feeling. Okay, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? What do you?
So is it like you hurt someone's feelings? So okay, I have to earn this back. I have to fix it. So what can I do to fix this?
What and how much? And you just keep doing.
That's when your people pleasing comes into play. Okay.
Yeah. So.
But it's an extreme form.
But it's all extreme
Very
forms, right? So in looking at all these different forms of people pleasing, it's hard to think that women won't fall into one of those buckets.
Yeah.
So now as we look at it, it is, well, if you look at the classic one, I feel that there's a nurturing aspect that goes to women. Even coming back to your comment with your daughter, she's exhibiting very empathetic skills, which are great, but those in themselves aren't people pleasing.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
That's just
nurturing.
And right, it is when I feel in the capacity of your community, society, your home, you start to go, yes, that is great. Yes, this is good. You should be this way. You should care what they think. You should want to be
Then
friends.
we're ingraining.
Yes. Then what we're doing is we are kind of co-creating this need to make sure you keep being this person and keep doing this because that is so good that you do this and she loved this and keep being that friend and keep being
All the positive reinforcement keeps it going until they go extreme with it.
And then you become a people because now you've been taught this is what I need
This is
to
good
do.
behavior.
This is good behavior, right?
Or either I want to continue to get this praise.
Yes.
So I need to continue to do this.
There you go.
Yes.
Well, there is also cultural aspect to this.
That's the other part.
Different cultures approach approach it somewhat differently. I would say that in a lot of like European cultures,
It's the opposite.
it's a lot cooler.
Yeah.
And so maybe the females are not as if you're interacting are maybe not as inclined to be people pleasing. They tend to put themselves first, where if you go more into Middle Eastern cultures, maybe, or go into warmer climates now. Maybe go into Asia.
Or the Caribbean.
Traditional role of woman maybe is
Africa.
she's raised in a way that is different from someone from Sweden or Russian or even French or there are going to be huge cultural differences. I know if I remember being a little kid, yes, you are guided because you told you can't do this because so and so will not like you. Look at that girl. You look at so and so's daughter. She is so and so. You should be like her. And you either going to get on with the program or hate that girl for the program. So no, I don't want to be like her.
Yeah.
No.
Well, and I will say, I don't think that it is strictly women because my oldest son is a mini version of me. I see it, and I really hope he grows out of it because I don't want him to, be hamstrung by emotions the same way I am sometimes. But even things like, what do you want for your birthday? Where do you want to go for dinner? Oh, I don't know. What sounds good to you? And he wants to make people happy. He doesn't want to hurt people's feelings, and but he's also very sweet and very kind too. But it's to such a degree. It's not just because he is nice. It's because he's looking for validation.
Yep.
And I know that's the same reason that I have been the way I have been, and I see it in him, and I'm really trying to kind of not force him out of it, but coax him out of it, and it's hard, especially when you've lived your life one way for damn near 40 years.
Yeah.
Do you think, like, in the family where there are multiple children, multiple siblings, that's a natural progression?
It rolls over.
Yes,
I think
because
so.
everybody tries to find out where they can attention the most.
Well, it's getting attention the most. How stressed mom is. I feel like they want that. Everybody needs that positive feedback from mom. And when mom's stressed, it's how can we all make mom happy? How can we all make life easier for mom?
I think it's also a little bit of just your personality too.
Yes, your mom personality.
Yes.
Yes.
But even, I was like this before I was a mom. I was like this. I remember being like this in elementary school. So, I'm swinging, and the boy that I have a crush on says, "Hey, give me the swing." Okay, maybe he'll like me. Go get your own swing.
I'm like, go get
buddy.
your
Yeah.
You were way nicer than me.
I know. And
We've heard stories about you, Lana.
They're dolls. They're not true.
so, how do we shift from being a people pleaser to a self pleaser?
I mean, there are a few different ways, right? We talked about a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, boundaries. Even like you said, the balance. Somebody said balance, right? I mean, and we can dig into a lot of these because it's not easy. I mean, I'm going to take boundaries so you guys can take the rest because, like, as I'm going through this year in what is supposed to be kind of this journey to being a healthier me, and my biggest thing was the resistant people pleasing, right? Where you are in a relationship where you're like very individual, like again, solar focused. And then you get a lot of slack about being that person, right? Because it's like, okay, you're only focused on you. So then you go in the complete reverse to ensure that, okay, this person is okay. So now you start giving and giving and giving. And you're giving till you're like, crap, I don't even know what I'm giving anymore. It's like I'm just autopilot giving.
And what for?
And what for? Okay, and so then it's like now you have to go deal with this thing called boundaries. And you look at boundaries as like, I'm going to draw a white chalk around my body. Nope. If it doesn't fit in here, you're not getting in. But that's not what boundaries is.
Yeah.
Boundaries is really the idea that you create systems or tools or things to ensure that you stay full.
Yeah.
Not to keep someone out,
Yes.
but to keep yourself from actually coming out of your own alignment and being so depleted you have no idea who you are,
Yeah.
right? And so I think boundaries is number one, but looking at boundaries from a more positive perspective, it's about you. What do I create to ensure that I am full as a mom, as a wife, as a girlfriend, as a sister, as a friend, whatever that is, so I can still give and give, again, in that logical order of who needs it and with some level of genuineness, because if you go the extreme, you're just giving just to give, just to go away.
Yes.
To be
Absolutely.
done with it.
Absolutely.
So, Monique, how do you feel is the best way to shift from being a people pleaser to a self pleaser?
There's so many ways, but I'm going to hit on being assertive. I think it's important to be assertive, not rude, but assertive in prioritizing yourself and your needs. So understanding that there's no shame in saying no, and that no is a full sentence. There's no is a full sentence. There's no reason to explain or say why you're saying no, right? That's just how I feel. I'm sorry, but that is also part of being assertive. No is a full sentence for me. And it's not rude.
You've used that on me, by the way.
I have used
she
it
said
on
no,
me.
and I said, what? She said, Curry, no is a full sentence.
No is a full sentence, And and I feel as though you can be assertive with prioritizing yourself without making the other person feel bad or that their need is not important to you at the time. But at this time right now, you need to figure something else out as opposed to always being, like someone said, Johnny on the spot to someone. And sometimes no, it's okay to say no and be comfortable with saying no when it's time for you to back down and it's time for you not to always be that person that's there. So just be assertive, not rude, just assertive.
Perfect. Lana, what about you?
Well, you need to really limit. I believe that a balance comes from limited on how much you put out there to please others and how much you give yourself, which is basically setting your priorities. So like Monique said, no is a complete sentence, but you also need to make sure that you're thriving, that you're not just running yourself ragged, just doing all these things for other people. Take care of yourself, give yourself rest. I mean, I know I've touched down on this in some other episodes, but if you don't feel like making this decision right now, just don't. Maybe there is a pressure, it's still going to be there tomorrow. So make sure you're okay inside and then see what else needs your attention after that.
Radhika?
All right. I know I'm supposed to say what I do for like prioritizing, but I have to add on to Lana because that's something that I actually started doing. So it's like setting the limit. So sometimes there's, that one friend that drains you completely on the phone. I only have 5 minutes, okay? So what's going on? You set that limit so they know up front, like, I only have 5 for you. But that's something definitely I use. But outside of that, it's really prioritizing myself. So taking the time and the break I need to recharge and what it is that I use to recharge, like making sure I have those in rotation regardless of what it is. And then being able to say, okay, I sense my energy is dropping. All right, I need to take this time, whether I'm turning off my phone like Monique does or going to go listen to music, whatever that is that helps me kind of refuel and recharge, making sure I'm doing that on a regular basis to make sure that I am where I need to be.
Okay. Kim, what about you?
I think it's about accepting and acknowledging that you can't please everybody. And it took me a lot of emotional stress to get to that point in my life and realize that you can't please everybody. You can try, and you're just going to exhaust yourself and deplete your energy and what you have to give. And I mean, you can't. There's no way to make everybody in the world happy. And so making yourself happy's got to be a goal, and acknowledging that's something that's unattainable.
Yeah.
And it's okay not to please everybody.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I've told people is when I feel like I'm being manipulated, I tell them straight up, I'm immune to guilt.
I need to get to that point.
I'm not.
I am immune to guilt. I mean, it's on the record. And when I feel like, my strings are being pulled, that gives me an opportunity not to feel the guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know I shouldn't. I mean, I haven't done anything. And it's somebody else's problem they're trying to dump on me and make me feel about it, which is...
I go into defensive mode. I was like, oh, okay, so now I need to put on my defenses. That's not going to work with me, so...
This is a conversation my brother and I have frequently. Just because in our family, the guilt was heavy. If you did not do what
Mama
was
says.
asked of you, well, not even necessarily mama, it could be grandmother, or great grandmother, whoever, the waterworks came in or the guilt came in, and then you're like, I don't want to be the one to make her cry today. And then I got to a point in life where I was like,
That's a form of
you're going to be okay. And everybody's going to be fine if you don't all get along today and you don't get what you want today. And we're just going to go and digress from there. But my brother and I have this conversation a lot because he says that I still am guilty of falling for the manipulation and the guilt trip. And he's like, you've got to learn to just say no and stop falling for the guilt and stop falling for the manipulation. And he catches it more than I think anybody else does in my life. But he calls me on it every time. He's like, say no.
And it is a full sentence.
Yes.
And remember, it's
With an exclamation mark, not a period. You can even put 2 if you need to.
I may need 3.
You can do it in Spanish.
she puts 4.
No question marks. Just say
No.
I would say that for me, it's because I was telling Karee, my default answer was always yes.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever anybody wanted something, yes, sure. What do you need? And now that I have recognized that I have this disease, then I have had to slow down and become much more intentional with my answers. So whenever anybody asks me, can you help me out with something? My answer is more often than not, I'll sure try. What do you need? Because I will try to help you, but once you tell me what you need, if you need me to go bury a body, it depends on who I'm talking to.
Hold on, you got me. Okay, let's roll on top.
I'm so sorry, y'all. I am not built for prison, so none of y'all bury anybody's. I'm just saying, don't call me.
No.
Exclamation mark, exclamation mark,
I'm not
exclamation
good
mark.
with physical labor. So.
I would help you bury the body, but I am horrible at lying, so we would get caught. So I would immediately turn.
I'm a ride or die, girl. I'm a ride or die. See?
Call
Ride or die.
Karee.
Call me.
I'm not commenting on air. That way it can't be used against me at a later date.
I'm not the one out of all. I'm not the one. If anything goes down, no, it wasn't Monique.
Don't call her. Don't call her. Do you ever, coming from what you're saying, do you ever acknowledge or notice, though, that when you go out of your way to do so much for so many, that it's not valued or reciprocated, and that there's a lot of people that just don't even acknowledge that you give so much of yourself?
Yes, well,
They're taken for granted.
Yes, it depends on the person and the relationship you have with that person. I think if you have a boyfriend or a spouse that you are constantly bending over backwards to do something for them, you create an expectation, especially if you do it in the beginning. And they're thinking, oh, she woke up at 5 a.m., she made me a 3-course breakfast, and she did the laundry, and the house is clean.
Yeah.
You know, I mean.
You created the monster.
Yes, and when you do this, you know, and maybe the first time you did it, it came from a place of love, but then you do it again, and then it becomes an expectation, and then if you are sick in the head, then you feel like, okay, I have to keep doing this because this is what they're used to.
That's what they expect.
Yes, I'm obligated to do this. Even
And
though,
it's hard to break those when
yes,
you do that.
even though we're not really obligated, we feel as if we are. And it's breaking that, it's that voice in your head. It's
Mindset.
breaking that and stopping that and saying, no, like, slow your roll and think about this before you overextend yourself again.
Who do y'all think we people please more? Our children, our spouses, family, coworkers? Like, I want y'all's take on that. Who do y'all feel like you people please the most in your family?
Okay,
or
so definitely when I was married, it was my husband. And then for sure, still my kids. But everyone else, I mean, you know, friends, yes, to a certain extent, but coworkers, all that stuff, I mean, I don't care. If, you know, at this point in my life, like at this point in my life, it's like, you know, yeah, I mean, it's not about pleasing them. But for sure, when I was married, it was definitely my husband and my kids, absolutely. Now, I've even gotten out of people pleasing my mom. It's like, no. No.
You recognized it too.
Yeah, she asked me a question this morning and I was like, no. No.
I used to want to please my parents so badly when I was younger that everything I did for my first maybe 35 years of life, I wanted to make my parents happy, and almost all of that revolved around getting certain level of education, having kids. I don't know. I just wanted it just like my whole objective was to make sure my parents were happy with the way I came out. And then I realized it really didn't matter. They were happy that I was happy.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like purely self-inflicted. So, and it probably like was my first call of like evaluating why I do certain things.
Like a wake-up call.
Yes, but it was like I've had several calls. It's maybe was like one of the first ones where I was like, well, it shouldn't be like that, because really, okay, here's another degree, we can put it on the wall, nothing really changed, but like, what about me now?
Yeah.
But I've had several experiences within that following 5 years that really made me evaluate how I respond to people around me and how they respond back, because what Lee was saying, it's become, you set a bar, and you set it so high, and it becomes the basic norm that you constantly jumping up and hitting yourself with that bar on your head, because you have to live up to it, because the moment you drop it, you start to do a little bit less. Everybody around you get hurt and offended, so, you know.
So are we saying that instead of starting the bar up here, maybe we need to start the bar here, and then when we go up here, it's like, woohoo!
Yeah.
You went above and beyond, because you're right. If you started up here, and I think that's what I did. I know that's what I did, because someone told me, hey, if you are not going to keep it up here, then don't start. But me with my extra smart self, I was like, no, I'm gonna start up here because I'm gonna be able to keep this level all the time. And then when you don't, the other person feels like now this is basic because this is where you started out. So now it's like when you don't want to go up there, it's like, why aren't you doing this? And I'm like, this is not normal.
No.
True.
This is not normal.
Don't you think?
I don't think it's the bar.
No, I think
What?
it comes down
Let
to
me-
assessing the feelings or if you're able to perform or because I think one of the things is when we talk about the prioritizing yourself,
The
how does it
prioritization.
make you feel?
Mhm.
It's because you don't want to say, I'm going to limit bringing the bar
Yup.
here because if that brings you joy, then
Go do it.
go to that bar, okay? But if not, then it's okay to say, all right, I'm coming back down to mid-grade. But it's being able to communicate that to your person, right? Or whoever that individual is. How do I feel in this moment? How does it affect me? How does it affect the resources I have to give? And that's the thing that I think it comes back to kind of the whole self-assessment and realization. It's not saying you can't do it. It's just understanding that it's okay to say, I'm not able to consistently do it. It's not in me at this moment. And being able to make sure you verbalize it, whatever
Yeah.
the manner is.
So I think I was kind of just going off of what she said about like having the bar up here and then that being an expectation.
But
So when you have that bar up here, then it is an expectation because I've actually lived in this expectation up here. So I know of what I speak right now. This is expected. So when you start up here, and if you know that you really can't keep it up here all the time, then don't start up here.
Or maybe
you don't
the
keep it as a
idea.
continuous because that expectation doesn't come from one incident. I don't think that's where it comes from.
So
It's
no,
the
but I think,
repetition,
but I
right?
think for Monique and I, because clearly she's lived this, I've lived this. It's not just the expectation that they put on us; it's the expectation that we put on ourselves.
But I think
And
that comes
it's-
to being the whole.
Well, yeah, but you have you have to recognize it first. And if you don't recognize that you have this issue, then
Because when the expectation was up here, then I was still very much a people pleaser, and not really aware that this is something that,
I hear that, but here's my concern though. Now we're saying to fix the problem, we're going to do a workaround. That's a workaround because you have to be able to know that it is a problem, right? Because you're saying, I'm not going to do this. That's going to be another problem because we haven't really addressed the underlying cause. So we're just starting at just a midline, mid-grade. Means you're limiting your experiencing in life and so forth because you're like, we haven't fully figured out what the root cause is so we can address it on the whole.
which is the fact that
Go ahead.
you were people pleasing. So now that you've realized that okay, this is not a place that you want to live, then you do kind of bring it down.
well, and then
It's
you do what you're saying, and you say, okay, look, I've done this in the past, but today I do not have it in me to get up and make you a big breakfast because your girl's tired.
It's back to what she said. Setting the limits. I don't think it's a hard fast start at the top or start at the bottom. I think it's a ebb and flow. It fluctuates. And if you've set the limit in terms of today, this week, this month, here is where I'm at, you may be in a month where you're like, man, I felt poured into, I feel, and I'm up here, and I'm going to do all these things up here. But guess what? Next month, not so much. But those limits you're setting, and you have to realize them in order to respond.
The base to all of this is communication is key.
Yeah, there we go,
If you
too.
can't communicate how you're feeling, how you're drained, what you're thinking, your partner cannot respect, value, or appreciate how you're feeling, how you're ebbing and flowing,
Yep.
how you are that day.
Yep.
And that goes into a whole nother issue.
Yep.
If that communication's not there, that respect's not there, that value, if they can't
Trust
value
base.
and respect that you need this for yourself, that's, we've got a red flag.
And it could go across other.
Yeah, but this is not just, setting boundaries and having this is not just your personal relationship
Right,
with your
exactly.
spouse.
It's
It can be a workplace,
It's
it can be a
family.
client, professional relation, it can be family, it can be a friend, it can be acquaintance, a child. Because I think, and I'm just going to summarize this, what I think, that we actually people please out of fear of being lonely and not
And
liked
rejected,
and
yes.
rejected, out of fear of rejection. So and most of the time we're not conscientiously doing this. This is our defense mechanism and a desire to be the part of the pack. We don't want to be the lonely wolf. Some of us want it, but that usually comes with experience where you can't wait to become one.
That's right.
But as a general, and I don't know if you guys notice it, but it usually comes with age.
Yes,
Yeah.
it
And
does.
with experience,
Absolutely.
you start to
Yes.
feel like, okay, now I can sort through all of this and decide what works for me. And when things work for me, everything around me tends to
Yeah.
fall into place.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think that's key, like what works for you, because
Yeah.
what works for you may not work for you.
Yeah.
So it's finding what works for you and whatever that looks like for your situation.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you guys for joining us today. We've talked a lot about people pleasing, what it is, what causes it, why we do it, and how to get out of it by setting those boundaries, prioritizing ourselves,
Setting limits.
setting limits,
Realizing.
and realizing that we're not going to make everybody happy, and just being honest with ourselves, slowing down and shutting off that part of our brain that wants to say yes. And if you feel like this episode really hit home with you, there's this book that I read. It's called The Disease to Please by Harriet B. Breaker. It's amazing. And it breaks down the different types of people pleasers, why we are the way we are, and how to get out of the funk. I highly recommend it. It's a very easy read.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you next time.
All right, guys. Don't forget to
Like, subscribe, and share.
give us comments too.
Happy holidays!